Good evening, everybody. This is going to be a great day indeed that I believe will bring forth, it'll bring forth something that you may have not experienced in your life in a while. This is JMC Live. It is the 25th of August, 2012. I am your host, Jeremy Caverly. This week, what I want to bring to you are multiple stories and things that have personally affected me, and I've actually seen many people rally together for a cause and stand up for truth. One of the things I want to briefly cover is how Mr. Armstrong has passed away. You know, the first person to go up in outer space and walk on the moon. That is a sad day that he's passed away. So our hearts and prayers are for those that remember who he is. Well, I wanted to transition from the sad story of Mr. Armstrong to something that actually is very, very promising to show what America truly stands for. Now, I don't know about you, but I remember growing up as a kid, one of the biggest pastimes was watching game shows on TV. Wheel of Fortune was something that my family would watch, or Jeopardy and other shows like that. Well, now fast forward several years later, we have a game show network. And what is an amazing feat, and I have to share this with you, is the American Bible Challenge itself, the show, has now debuted as the #1 show of all time. It was announced in their press release that the American Bible Challenge brought 2.3 million total viewers for the night, the largest in its 17-year history. Now, I don't know about you, Miranda. I didn't even realize the game show network was on for 17 years because, well, I didn't have it with the cable when I had cable in the beginning. And now we're just trying to transition into the present day. I'm like, it's amazing how far we've come. And Jeff Foxworthy, of all people, is actually the host. And I've seen the preview clips for the show. I've heard people talk about how they're wanting to try out to go and be part of the show. And everyone that I've talked to, I don't know if you're aware of this, for in the Christian realm, there is a Christian Trivia Pursuit game you can buy. And it's kind of the similar format, but some of these questions later in the show can stump even me. And I'm a minister, and I'm willing to admit that. There's things like, well, what age was this person when he was at the Sea of Galilee? Or who's this cousin of this brother's nephew? Things like that. Or what age was this? And what sea was this? And what city was that connected in? So it kind of connects the Bible to like present day things. Like, so where is Judea in present day and time, 2012? Well, you would have to understand the language and the terminology and whatnot. So it's pretty cool connecting the Bible to present day, as I just said. And it's just so amazing to see 2.3 million viewers are interested in the show. And even better yet, this was like the best show of all time, 17 years. Now, you would think that Jeopardy, or say, I know some of the older Jeopardy shows and other shows. Right. Is The Price is Right on the Game Show Network? I don't know if it is. But you would I'm kind of curious to see what this number is compared. I haven't found it to The Price is Right or anything like that. But the fact that the Game Show Network has the largest viewing of all time, 17 years, 2.3 million viewers, what does that tell you about America? It's a question I ask people many, many times. What does that really say about Americans if the #1 game show is about the Bible? It's not about Boggle. It's not about Kerplunk. I play Kerplunk.
I think it shows that people are curious.
You think they're curious?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's curiosity, and also it's educational.
Well, that's the thing. Let me rewind back to when I was in high school in Huntington, Texas. It's in between Houston and Dallas, Texas, for those that are curious. And what happened is I had Bible literature, the class Bible literature, as an elective in a public school. Let me say that again. I had Bible literature Bible literature as a course in public school. A public school system in Texas. And the way it was legally allowed to be done is it was presented as a form of English literature and a historical fact. And what we ended up doing in the class is all the about 5 or 10 denominations, the doctrines, the clergy that were over doctrines that were in Texas or other states that were able to come in, or a representative that could actually explain the doctrine, brought in their stuff, did a quick little presentation. We were allowed to ask questions, and then different stories and things we were actually allowed to learn about. And it didn't say, for those that weren't Christians in the class, because some people honestly were in the class that didn't want to learn, they just wanted an elective. It didn't offend anybody because it wasn't saying, well, you have to believe this or you don't have to believe this. It was presented as, this is historical fact. And what they ended up doing, they connected the stories of the Old Testament and New, and we connected it and paraphrased it into Roman historical books, Jewish historical books, and other books of the time. And it was a really amazing thing. So fast forward now back to 2012, American Bible Challenge debuting as the Game Show Network's #1 show of all time makes me feel a little more faith in the American people. It makes me feel that there is something going on in America that actually has promise. That no matter how many times I go to college and I hear people tell me, well, you need to believe this radical view, I don't hear about your Christianity, and all this list goes on and on and on. And I don't have a problem if you don't believe in Christianity. I think you have a right to believe in what you're going to believe. But in the moment that you're telling me that I can't express that view and share that with others and try and persuade them to believe my faith, and seeing another side saying, well, you can have this and you can do that, but Christians, they need to shut up. I don't think that's tolerance. I mean, I've taken college courses on tolerance, and that's not the definition they give me in the book, and that's not what the professors are telling me. But if you look at mainstream media, what do they say every day? What do they say, Miranda? They end up saying, well, today we're going to have a lawsuit on having the Bible being used in the class. And we're going to have, like one of the stories I was looking at earlier this month was how a youth pastor was trying to allow food to be served to a full school's football team. And the wonderful people at the Freedom for Religion Foundation learned about this travesty and said, no, you can't be feeding people from a school if you're a church. So I'm like, why not? When I was a kid, I was asked by the youth pastor to invite people to come to church. I'd go to school and say, hey, come to church, we got free pizza. So you're telling me that if you voluntarily ask someone to come to your church, and these volunteer students and possibly faculty members get in their vehicles, or maybe the youth pastor or someone else takes them to the church, and I pray for your meal in my church, that's wrong. And that's what the article is pretty much about. It's like, we can't be doing that. We can't have this stuff. Then it's also connected to, and I'm talking about this in one of the groups that I'm discussing, about how multiple cities in the United States aren't allowing people to feed the homeless without having a what? A food handler's license. Now, for new viewers that aren't aware of who I am, I've been homeless before. And it wasn't the U.S. government that got me out of homelessness completely. No, it was Christians and atheists and Jews and all sorts of different people that I met in my life who gave me an opportunity to hold down a job, gave me an opportunity to eat a meal. Even one of them actually let me sleep in a cot in the back of their business. But we're living in a day, 12 years after me being homeless, I'm finding out multiple cities in Houston, Texas, and New York, and Nevada, they're saying, you can't do this anymore. I want to know why. Health reasons? So I challenge those today who say, well, for health reasons, we're not supposed to feed the homeless. So I have to ask, since the government wasn't the one that gave me the food, I wasn't on food stamps when I was homeless, I was on food stamps and assistance growing up, but not in the homeless situation. No, I wanted to work a job. And I have to ask those that believe that today, does that mean I should have just died? Or that I should just only get help from the government? That my fellow Americans, or if I'm in South Africa like I was, that was the thing that led me. I was at a homeless shelter, and I transitioned from a homeless shelter, helping other homeless while I was homeless, to go to South Africa to help people that were homeless. And you're telling me I can't do that, that I can get arrested. Well, that's fine. You can arrest me all you want. I have a problem with that. Speaking about fines and lawsuits and everything, we have two colleges, Grace College and the seminary in Indiana and Biola University in California. They have filed a federal lawsuit against what? The abortion/pill mandate. For those of you aware, these are colleges that are Christian, and they're trying to teach a Christian belief that they're pretty much not just, and that's the thing. People have accused me of being Catholic for taking the stand when it comes to these situations, and I've seen in context what liberals want. They want their thinking and decision making is that they're saying that they want to make a freedom of choice for women, and that women should have a choice to choose to make life or lose a life. And when I keep looking at this, and I'm reading it here in a text, and I want to kind of share it with you if you can read this with me. It says Christian colleges should remain free to operate according to their deeply held beliefs. Punishing religious people and organizations for freely exercising their faith is an assault on our most fundamental American freedoms. This is Gregory S. Baylor, Alliance of Defending Freedom, Senior Counsel. I can't argue with that. Why should Christian organizations that offer Christian assistance, and this even goes into the medical field, for those who have not looked at the historical fact, in America, in Europe, in Africa, elsewhere, nursing program, homeless shelter program, and the medical community was created by Christians. That doesn't mean there isn't atheists and Jews and others that have done stuff. But the biggest impact in America, you go to Houston, there's the Methodist Memorial Hospital. You go here to Ohio, you go right outside of Cincinnati, there's the Mercy Catholic Hospital. It's all over the country. And it's over 50%. And I had an atheist ask me on my Facebook wall, and I have a friend that's an atheist. This isn't the friend. He is a friend, but it's a different kind of friend. This is the friend that doesn't agree with any religion at all. He's against it all. Now, my other friend who's going to become a lawyer, he's cool with my belief, but he doesn't believe it. Yes, there are different categories of atheists. This one that's on my Facebook wall, he says, well, I shouldn't be forced to go to a Christian hospital or doctor or anything because I'm afraid they're going to preach at me. Well, the only place that I've ever seen anything close or remotely near that is if you come here to Ohio and you go up to Mount Carmel Hospital and the chaplain gets on the intercom and says a prayer. Other hospitals and places, you have to ask to see a chaplain. The doctor doesn't come in and say, before I check your vital signs and all this, I'm going to pray for you. No, but there are ministries and people that do go through hospitals. I've done a hospital ministry in my past. And the way it works is you ask, do you want me to pray for you? They say, no, you go to the next person. That's what Jesus said. It says, if you're welcome in a town, then share the message. If they don't like you, you keep going down the rule. You can break this down to each individual person that you personally see. Hey, I like this person, and I want to share a message. They don't like the message, go on down. But when the message that you're trying to share gets completely obliterated and you're not allowed to share anything at all, that's where the borderline gets crossed. The freedom of religion should exist in America. And in the moment that these things keep changing, it it doesn't work. Now, I understand that there are those that do not, there are liberals and even some conservatives, based on conversations I've had in public, based on my Facebook wall and other places, that they'll say that they believe that rape and incest should be completely only one side of an abortion, and that nothing else should exist unless, the woman chooses to keep the baby. Now, when I keep conversating with people, the dialogue, when you ask them what they believe, when it comes to actually even allowing someone to have a child in one of these horrific, because I don't agree with rape and incest by no means. I've been molested and raped myself, so I know it. So has my wife. She's been raped. So I can talk from personal experience here. That's not something fun, and most of the time some people have PTSD. I don't have it, but my wife does. And I'm very transparent on this because I want you to understand where I'm coming from. The talk is that it ends up being what's considered, well, we need, they try to consider a personal open belief of abortion. They're trying to say that it should be free to all, and not only just free to all, but they also want to turn around and say that, hey, why don't we make it an inconvenience? That's the terminology they usually say. Well, it's a burden and an inconvenience on a woman to have a child because they did not have sex. I agree, they did not have sex. They were violated. But then they say it's an inconvenience to have this child. And they said the only way it's a non-convenience is if it was completely perfectly planned. And I've asked most Americans, did you have a book given to you as soon as your baby popped out of you? Mr., ma'am, were you completely prepared for when you had a child? Was that actually a planned pregnancy? And what is a planned pregnancy? Is that where you write down on the, do I write down on the 25th of August when my show goes off, I am going to consummate my marriage with my wife and make certain that, she gets pregnant, and then 9 months later she's born, and then I'm going to have this book on how, and then I find out what sex the baby is, and because of that I'm going to buy all these items, and then I'm going to buy other books that will tell me exactly how this child is going to be. There's no book to know exactly how every child is going to be. For me, a computer science and business major, and a communications major, and a ministry major, and even a veteran of the Coast Guard, all these things line up to one word. The variables are not going to line up. 1 + 1 is not going to equal 2. Why? Because we are all each individuals. We all each work, think, breathe, and participate in regular life on a day-to-day basis differently. The time I wake up and do something is not the same way that you do it. We may have similarities, but we're never the same. When you go and look at DNA and the whole complex of two people, we may have the same thing, H2O, in our system, hydrogen and oxygen, and carbons and all sorts of things. But once you start building up the levels of complexity of what makes mankind, we are similar but not the same. The word's congruent from the math wizards. So I've asked the question in this situation about why don't we address the real issue about what's really happening and what's really going on with a woman. And what exactly happens to a woman that has a child? What can we do to assist those that were raped? Just generally raped. That could be incest or not, because I consider incest rape. Why don't we make it affordable? Because they consider the terminology a consequence to have a child. Why don't we assist them with their medical care from the point they know that they have been conceived? If they want to keep this child, why don't we make certain that they don't have a full-fledged burden of pregnancy? Because that's several thousands of dollars of pregnancy alone. Forget the cost of the 9 months up before of all the things you have to do as a woman. Then on the other side, what you have to look at is what happens after the child is born. Because of a woman, why don't we provide counseling? Because she's going to be traumatized. And I've not seen Republicans or Democrats getting into this level because they're just arguing on the surface, pro-life or pro-choice. When I started talking this deeper level of actually meeting the needs of the woman, meeting the needs of the child, majority of the liberals were praising my efforts of health care and praising my efforts of what we're trying to do as a community. And that's one of the things that I wanted to know. What is the best way to prove that conservatives can actually help the poor, or actually, go beyond the situations that are on hand? I wanted to stop for a minute and thank Fracture Saint Project for stopping by, Virginia, and Andy and Andy's buddies and everybody else that showed by. Thank you guys so much for coming in to our program today. It's an amazing blessing to have people show up tonight. Well, anyway, when it comes to these stories and trying to have this dialogue, it seemed to remove some of the anger, some of the hostility of what's happening. And speaking of changing things, tomorrow, and we're going to be participating in this after I work on a special interview that I have planned. What's going to happen is Greg Laurie is having his all across the United States Harvest America. We're going to be one of the people trying to share the message of the gospel of what's going on, probably in the live stream. Going to be doing some Twitter updates. My good friend Alex Marashko, reporter of the Christian Post, is actually going to be covering the Harvest America event, and he's already been posting some pictures. He has an exclusive interview on the Christian Post that you got to check out. There's about 1,800 churches have signed up to host a live simulcast of this event, and it's the first of its kind for Greg Laurie's Harvest Ministries. Now, the way I've thought about it, and just the wonderful thing with me being a tech guy as well, can you imagine how many people, if you take Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, radio, the internet, local churches, local ministries, and everybody say, let's all dive in together, let's all partner and work together and bring forth the message of the gospel. Can you imagine how many people you could reach? You could reach practically the whole country. This is an epic and amazing thing, because like Laurie says, and I completely agree with it, the only true hope and change for America is through Jesus Christ, and I agree with that. Some of my viewers say, well, I'm not so certain about that. You might put your trust in a political power. I can understand why a lot of people do, or in just the individual, or in themselves, or whatever. I put my faith and trust in Jesus Christ, because I realize that's who is going to really solve the issues. And yes, it'll filter down into Americans, it'll filter down into the rest of the world, but I don't think that can happen without allowing the Holy Spirit to work across the globe. And that's just going to be an amazing time, an amazing thing that's going to happen. Now, there's just like so many things that are happening. I mean, like Rick Warren has canceled the Obama-Romney event. Now, there's been speculation on CNN and other sites that have said what's happened. Warren's been quoted to say that it was because the civil issue, because of how the campaign was going. The two campaigns say they just weren't interested in doing it. And I've looked historically, Pastor Warren actually hosting this event brought a large crowd. A crowd of people that probably wouldn't have listened to a political campaign if they did not participate in that. So it's pretty sad that it's not happening and it's not going forward in the way that it should be. And then speaking of also more about our nation, there's a National Day of Repentance. And it's a growing movement. Like the next 90 days. This was done on the 21st of August. And what's happening with it is that to point out that believers need to pray and repent so the Lord can step in with His miracles. Apparently there's local churches and ministries across denominations that are wanting to do this. It's going to happen from Tuesday, September 25th through Wednesday, September 26th. It's supposed to be coinciding with the 3,450-year-old Jewish holiday of atonement, Yom Kippur. It's kind of like the National Day of Prayer, but this is more a personal one. The website is dayofrepentance.org. I think that is another issue in America and across the globe. When it comes to many issues, why are we doing the things that we're doing? One of the groups that I've been involved with is it's supposed to be like a debate group, but I've been just posting facts. And one of the questions someone asked is, well, does anyone have any solutions for these problems? So I started writing answers to some of these problems. And at this point, nobody's responding. I was like, why? And then the same people that don't respond are the ones that just keep posting political party stuff. And I'm sitting there scratching my head like, why can't we solve our problems? Why does it have to be so difficult?
Because in reality, maybe they don't want to solve the problem.
Well, that could be it too.
They want chaos. They want that because
chaos and discord.
Yeah, chaos and discord keeps them alive.
It's a possibility, especially when you go over to Egypt and you look at what's happening with the newly elected Muslim Brotherhood. For those that are aware of how Egypt works, when you say the word secular, they mean anything that is non-Muslim. Well, they're actually telling the media what they're allowed to post. And they're getting extremely angry and promoting violence on things that are happening. Like an August 9th report by El Baad, 1,000 of Muslim Brotherhood supporters attacked media facilities, beats Kahad Sahal, chief editor of the privately owned and secular Yom 7 newspaper. That's pretty creepy, and there's even video, which I'm not going to show the video. I couldn't watch the video, but they quote that Allah Akbar stuff and everything, and they're attacking him with sticks and knives and Molotov cocktails, and some of them are actually being physically crucified. I mean, like put on a stick, like Jesus Christ. And they say that death to infidels.
Why did our president support the Muslim Brotherhood?
Because here's the weird thing about supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. Apparently, some of our great leaders in America see that the part of the Muslim Brotherhood is supposed to be less extreme than the older regime.
I doubt that.
And that's probably what they presented. They went to the White House. They were nice and cordial. But now I'm looking and reading people that have translated. Now, of course, someone's going to say, well, that wasn't translated properly. Then explain the video that I can watch this dude getting his head chopped off, and explain these other videos people have sent me where people are being put on crosses, and you're reading the text in Al Jazeera English. I also
just saw an article yesterday about the violence increasing against women. Women that are just walking in the street, and the Muslim Brotherhood and other men are absolutely just beating them up and murdering them right in the street. And that's just women. That's not including Christians and anybody that's not following their beliefs. And it's just, I mean,
yeah, I think
I don't understand why. We knew this was coming. Why did they vote for them? Why did they let them in?
Well, one of the things is part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and here's the behind the scenes look on this. There are parts of the Muslim faction, because there's like 5 or 6 or 8 depending on where you live. There are different tribes, kind of like the tribes of Israel.
Yeah.
Well, they have their tribes or whatever. Well, there's 2 or 3 of these tribes that wanted to end. They want to end the extremist stuff, because when I was in the Coast Guard, I had a coworker who was a Muslim. He knew I was a Christian, and he didn't want to kill me. He said those that were over in Egypt and elsewhere that were throwing stones and all this other stuff, and I said, whoa, wait a minute. You don't want to what? You don't want to do this? He said, yes, What I've learned is there are multiple denominations of the Muslim faith, but it's not something Muslims want to talk about. It is not something the mainstream media wants to talk about. And it's something that nobody talks about. It's just happening, and there hasn't been anyone to document it because no one's been able to get close enough to see that. So that's what's happening, because right now I know there's tons of Muslims that go to my college, that teach at my college and other places, and they don't want to kill anybody. But then there's a group of people that do want to hurt people. There's both. And these small groups of Muslim factions that want to support America, want to support women and all this other stuff, they're being overshadowed by these terrorists and these other people that want to just destroy them. And the problem is, some of these Muslims, because they're being persecuted by other Muslims, we got Muslim and Muslim persecution going on. They get coerced and brainwashed to follow the radical side. So then the person that was an ally with the U.S., that's working with the U.S., at a U.S. base, flips the crap out and goes and does something.
Like killing our own soldiers on the base.
Like killing people. They threaten to destroy and kill all their family and take all their generational wealth away. And threaten that if you don't do what I want, I'm going to hurt all these people. And they start killing them by the minute, by the hour, whatever it is. Now, I don't know how many of you guys can tolerate, it's a known fact in the psychology world, it's a known fact for those that do interrogation at a police level and a military level, that the more that you say something and the more that things happen, it builds to this level where you're going to break down. Never have I heard from a man or woman that was molested or raped who told me that was the best experience of their life. There's things that they go through. There's things that happen. And it's creepy. And it's downright wrong. And as a Christian, I don't want a Muslim to go through that hell. I don't want a Christian to go through that hell. I don't want an atheist to go through that hell. All of this is completely wrong. But we got people that don't know. Speaking about not knowing, well, we have the federal and state civil rights violations cited for a new lawsuit by Thomas More Society in the Jubilee Campaign's Law of Life Project in the Federal District Court in Chicago. This is the Blessed Place to Work Women Stop Force Group insurance coverage for abortion, sterilization, and contraception. Now in this, they're wanting to try and move forward with trying to get more freedom. It's kind of like that other story it's talking about. It says, the federal and state governments are coercing our clients to violate their conscientious convictions, which is completely at odds with the resounding declarations of our founding fathers and our modern Supreme Court jurisprudence, said Todd Brejeka, President and Chief Counsel of the Chicago-based Thomas More Society. See, that's the thing. It's like when we don't realize what our rights are and we don't realize how things are going, it ends up putting us in a position where...
And also, if we don't... In knowing our rights and not standing up for our rights and allowing them to be taken away, then we have forfeited all that our country has fought for.
Because if you listen to a liberal explain this, and yes, there are conservatives that want to do this. There are conservatives that want to 100%ly remove the birth control pills and abortions for everyone. But there are other groups that just want themselves to have the freedom. Now, I personally, I don't want it to exist at all. But if I could just have it banned from religious entities, I'd feel a lot better than not having anything at all. And the talk is right now is they're only talking about the one piece and they're not wanting to talk about the full deal. Not the full plate, because there are multiple lawsuits going on. Multiple. And right now, the Gallup poll still shows over 50% of Americans are pro-life. Only 41% of Americans are pro-choice. And like I said in the groups, I've talked about this. This is just too close to cut it where you don't make a compromise. Because it's not going to end. I mean, it's been going on from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, today. And this stuff is going to continually go and go and go and grow and grow. And, you know, I have a hard time with this. I have a hard time sitting back and dealing with this stuff. You know, I've been trying to make a bipartisan view on it. And if you're wanting to work with someone who's pro-choice, I don't think I'm going to convince someone who's pro-choice to do with what I want. But I think I could get them to support on helping the woman so she doesn't have a burden anymore, counseling and healthcare. And I also think we can make it where it's religious freedom issues. And we don't have to, as a medical community that's a religious entity, have to support a bill and support medicine that we don't want to. You know, there's only going to be small cases where a woman's life is on the line. And that's the only part where I can't cross the line. Because I know people, I've known women who, if they did not have a DNC after 8 days of knowing they had a pregnancy, they were going to die. And I can't tell any woman, oh yeah, we need to just let that thing keep growing so it kills you. Because that's wrong. But you're not, but when you have this conversation, it doesn't get to that level. They don't want to get that in depth into these kinds of things. And speaking about getting in depth in things, the average American thinks that nonprofits spend 60% more on overhead than they reasonably should. They think that the average American adult believes it is reasonable for nonprofit organizations to spend 23 cents out of every dollar on overhead expenses such as fundraising, administration, but they think that 60 or more is too much. Now, for those of you that are aware of our ministry, I'm not a profit, I'm not a nonprofit, and I don't take donations for myself. Yet we've raised several thousands of dollars for people by working with nonprofits. Fracture Saint Project is trying to become a nonprofit. I'm trying to help them. Daughters of Ruth, it's a women's homeless shelter. They're a nonprofit. Solace, which is trying to help people get off of drugs and prescription drugs. They're a nonprofit. I'm just an individual partnering with businesses and organizations. Miranda's an individual. We just called this JMC Ministries. We just call these things so people can have a place and a thing to go to recognize it. It would be too hard for me to just start splatting all this stuff out and then not having some kind of logical sense in a box shell. So that's how that works. And the reason why I've done this is I've had Christians and atheists be able to give me this kind of story. And like Fracture Saint has said in the chat, it is very difficult for nonprofits to get help because there's a lot of persecution of nonprofits today on, well, where does the money go? And for me, just me, I came up with an ingenious idea. So why not, if I do have money, show how much money I have, show what item is needed, show a picture of the item, show a picture of the receipt, show a picture there's no more money, and then it's completely transparent to the world. And that's what I've done. So if someone asks me for help for something, that's what I've done. And then there's no accusing because I'm not pocketing anything. I personally feel that I shouldn't pocket anything, so I don't have to worry about these kind of attacks. And it's opened the doors for a lot of things. And even while I'm helping other nonprofits, I'll do fundraising for the nonprofits. I've helped Fractured Saint. I'm still going to be helping Fractured Saint and others by either doing interviews with them or personally doing the donation or whatever I need to do. And I realize that this is something that we can fix for America, for the rest of the globe, because nonprofits are essential to a lot of things that are happening, because there are people that will 100%ly not back a cause without a financial donation, a tax write-off in some cases. That's their reasoning for donating. They want a tax write-off. Some of them just want to be able to see that you have that level of corporate/government connection. In the case of me, many of these stories that I'm talking about is talking about our own government making mistakes and doing things wrong. And if things get any worse, I don't want to have any more government control over me than I already have. I already paid taxes. All my money is taxed already. You know, if somebody, like I said, other times I've helped people that have a need. I say, well, this person has an electric bill. Here's the bank account for the electric bill. Call the electric company yourself. Verify this person has a need. And when that bill is paid off, we can verify that. Have a letter sent. Bill's been paid off. Here's how much money was raised. I try and find solutions to problems without all the extra gobbledygook in between. And I think this story is something that some nonprofits can benefit from on the level of transparency. I think transparency for many nonprofits needs to happen. The reason why the 501c3 was started in the 50s, do realize churches were not listed as nonprofits before the 50s. My grandmother taught me this. I've read the historical facts. Churches were not labeled nonprofits. Didn't have a government thing in file before the 1900s, before the back when we were not even in the United States. Before the United States existed, churches did not have a government piece of paper on file, unless you were like in Italy and some other places. So we fast forward till today. And this is why the way I do things. But even though, like the nonprofits I assist and everything, I say your most paramount thing that you need to do to build trust with the people you're trying to reach is you need complete transparency of where your money comes from. And I say if you can actually show a financial report every single month, here's how much came in, here's how much went out, here's what's left, and make that public to anyone who wants it, then who can accuse you of falsified goods? Take it a step further. Let an independent agency and an independent accounting group do your finances for you, so then you can't be accused of any under-pocket mess. And that takes care of a lot of stuff. But unfortunately, giving extra accounting to someone else and all this other stuff costs twice as much as if you're like me. I've taken accounting classes myself, although I don't do my accounting on my own. I'm not that great. You got to find someone else to do it. You got to get to that next step, and that's why I kind of like these stories. You know, I like mixing this stuff up. It's pretty great to me to see that we can, you know, move further and move beyond all the different things that are happening. Now, speaking about moving beyond, let me give you a backstory on something. When this was like right after my homelessness. I went to an academy, a Christian academy, and at the academy, and part of my homeless time, I did not have access to cable or TV. I had a little headset, so I had radio, and I had some CDs and whatnot. I had a Sony Walkman. That shows you how old I was. This is what, 2000? Yeah, about 2000, 12 years ago. And when I left the academy in November of 2000 to go home for Thanksgiving and stayed home for reasons, I turned on TV to ABC, and I was just flipping channels, and I recognized, is that a butt cheek? What the, huh? What in the world? And it was NYPD Blue, I found out. And all this cussing was happening. Now, January, February, March, April, May, because the last time I watched TV was in January 2000. This show didn't exist. God's name was not in vain. This was 12 years ago. And then all of a sudden, God's name is in vain, and there's a woman's butt on TV. And I'm scratching my head like, what happened in the last 4 or 5 months? Well, fast forward till 2012, and because of lawsuits and things, some of this is still going on, but what they're doing to get around it is they're pixelating majority of the nudity. But a new study shows that primetime TV is up 6,300% over just last year alone. And how many naked people are running around on TV? My question is, why do we need naked people on TV? And my other question is, why do we have to have so much violence on TV? My other question is, why do you have to have so much cussing on TV? Does the nudity and the cussing and the violence really bring in the views? When studies have shown that majority of the movies and TV shows that have the highest ratings are normally those that are G-rated. Walt Disney Films gets higher ratings than all the Saw movies combined. Just one Walt Disney film that did well. The Lion King has more ratings than all the 6 Saw movies combined. Why is that? Because more people are able to buy the tickets. That's the simple answer. But on TV, yes, we all pay the same thing, so they start watching these things. I guess it's a shock and awe thing that we have. Other people I've talked to, some ministers, some non-ministers, just regular people or whatever. Yeah, I don't even own cable, so I don't even watch it. I've gone to people's homes and tried flipping through the 200 some odd channels to watch stuff, and I end up on the cartoon channel or on the history channel, or I don't even, or maybe a news station. And this was just the other day. I was flipping through, and there was a show about witchcraft, there was a show about aliens, and then some cartoon that had half-naked people pixelated, and I just said, I can't watch this anymore. And more so, regardless if you're a Christian or not, here's the simple psychology question. How does a man or woman not think about sex if that, or violence, if that's the only option you have when you turn on a channel? There are some TV stations, that's the only thing they offer in the evenings. And you're forced to have to turn to something else. If you're a man and you're a Christian or maybe another religion and you want to remain faithful to your wife almost all the way up to the point of extremism that you don't want to look at anyone else naked, then you couldn't watch the TV. There are shows that are on primetime TV that aren't full of all this stuff. And I know because I don't know what I was watching, so I can't tell you what it was. I don't remember the title, but there was some stuff I was watching the other day, and it wasn't like the big craziness. I mean, we have American Idol. It's one of the bigger shows. Is there full frontal nudity on American Idol now? I don't think so. Outside of tribal nudity on Discovery Channel, which now is being pixelated. Shark Week. I like Shark Week. It's Discovery Channel. It's a big thing. I haven't watched it in a while, but... So these are the questions I have to ask you. You know, this is a personal choice, I know. I know there are people that watch my show that love all these programs and you don't see anything wrong with it. I'm not going to force you to stop watching. But I have to tell you, I mean, at one point, yes, the Discovery Channel had Aborigine, tribal nudity, as they called it. But anyway, I have to ask you, what's important? You know, the study shows there are 76 incidents of full nudity on 37 different programs, compared to 15 incidents in 14 shows the previous season. So in 2011-2012 season, there are 34 programs right now that have full nudity. I'm not even talking about half semi-nude. I'm not talking about a half a butt cheek. It's the full frontal, full back, blah, blah, blah. So we go from 15 to 37. That's a big. Almost 70% of the scenes where nudity was shown, it happened before 9 o'clock. Compared to 50% of the full nudity scenes which aired before 9 p.m. in the 2010-2011. Now the argument 12 years ago was that NYPD Blue, this is what they were saying, had a right to be on air because it was on after 9 o'clock. 12 years later, it doesn't matter if you're on at before 9 o'clock. Now I know my international friends that live in Australia and other channels, there is simulated and unsimulated sexual activity in their programs on at any hours of the day. And their cultural mindset is that sex isn't bad, violence is bad. So they have less violent programs on their TV stations. And the argument that they have is that their crime rate is down because they're promoting less crime, and their sex rate is down, they say, by promoting more sex. Now, if that happened in America, based on American culture, it's like the more American Pie type films, the more things like that keeps happening. We seem to keep over repeating ourselves in this cycle of, if you see it, do it. Now, the argument is in America that there are a group of people that want to promote that if we talk more about sex and educate people on options, there'll be less people making ignorant decisions. Now, while removing the veil of ignorance does make complete sense to me, I get that. But at what point do we stop crossing this line? You know, I had to study into this to find out what's happening. We now have a S rating descriptor for our TV shows. But an S that means there's going to be sex in the show. Well, S can be on a PG to a TVMA. So I'm kind of wondering, since it's pixelated nudity, they're probably still making it a TV PG or TV, 14 rating? I don't know. It's really strange on how this happens, and it's been on different shows like ABC, Don't Trust the Bee, and Apartment 23. It's been on Servitory. It's been on The Office. It's been on America's Got Talent. It's been on a bunch of different shows. But those are some of the bigger ones. You know, I remember when I was a kid, TV was the big thing. Like, Brandon and I were having like a pout moment, an upset moment. Why isn't there cartoons on TV on Saturdays? But, you know, these are free choices that we have to make, you know. So here's my question. What do we do what is the option for those that want to be conservative or want to be Christian or however you want to define? You don't want to have this full frontal nudity issue. You got pretty much two options I can give you. You can not have cable, but then if you have children who have been used to cable, you're going to have a big problem. You can be like me and Miranda. We honestly, we go to thrift stores and regular stores, and we have a VHS to DVD burner, and we buy old VHS for like $1 or whatever, and we try and burn them on DVD, so that, because most of the tapes that we get are about near destroyed. So if you don't burn it, you're going to have to trash it. And we get some films that are normally $10, $20, $30 on DVD for $1 on VHS. Now, some of you don't want to go to that extreme. I understand that. So go buy your DVDs and Blu-rays. Like Blockbuster, they have like a 4 for $20 deal sometimes. Walmart has sales. Try and find a substitute. Because here's the thing. The last thing you want to do as a parent, as a minister, as a Christian, trying to tell your friends and your family, your kids, and whomever you love, acquaintance, and not have something to fill in the gap. They're going to think you're a complete nut job in some cases. Because I've been told that already, that I don't want to watch this stuff. I don't have cable. How do you live with yourself? I had someone in college ask me this during the summer, like, what do you do without cable? What do you do without cable? Well, I had more time to read, because I like to read, and I play video games, or I try and do different things. I mean, there's different options of things that you can actually do to get beyond these different situations, and I think that's one of the biggest things we have to do. Another question is this sinful? There have been many ministers that have asked this question. Is it a sin to watch something? I'd have to say, yeah, it's a sin what you watch, because if it's not, then tell that to men and women that watch porn. Why is that not sinful? If watching porn is sinful, what's the difference from watching programs that have things that you tell your kids and your friends, hey Jeremy, don't say that cuss word. Hey Jeremy, don't go have sex with that person. Hey Jeremy, don't do this. Don't go do that. Yeah, and we know how hard that is for most Christians to be able to line up the Word of God at that level. You know, it's kind of hypocritical of us as Christians to tell someone, you need to stop cussing, but then you sit and you watch programs all day where cussing happens. There was a minister that was talking about it, and he used one of the movies, I think it was called The Hangover. And he mentioned that he looked on IMDb and saw that the F word, the 4-letter vulgarity F word, was mentioned like 30 or 40 times. And God's name in vain was mentioned 30 or some odd times. And he said, while there may have been jokes in that even if you removed the cuss words, it would still be funny and non-sinful. But the question that this other pastor said, what if I came into church and I said, how you effing doing today, you GB effing blah 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 guys? How you doing? High five, effer. Do you think you would come back to that church? Would you consider me to be a legitimate person of the faith? Would you consider me to be a person that you would trust? Everybody said, no, Pastor. I don't think you should say that word. That's wrong. And the pastor said, well, if it's wrong for you to sit in my pew and listen to me say it, what's the difference between you turning on that TV or putting your money in the movies or sliding that DVD in there and watching someone else do it? What's the difference? And they didn't know how to answer. They just sat there amazed that he actually just said that. They were like, you actually said that? I never thought about it that way. And a lot of us don't. You know, kids are the first ones to point out when we say a curse word and then we tell them not to say it and then we go and want to watch a show. I don't know how many times I used that excuse when I was a kid. When I didn't know any better and I wasn't going to church and I wasn't doing anything, that was the number one firing trigger I had on my mom and grandma. Well, Mom, you watched that show, blah, 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 and they said blah, blah, and my mom would turn around and say, what did you say? Well, I said, well, the guy on the TV said blah, 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 blah. Well, you just said, boy, it's time for your whooping. Well, why do I got to get whooped? You're watching him say it, and I heard you say it last week. That's, if kids are like the most amazing filter factor of our lives. If you teach them Christian principles, they'll be the first ones beyond your spouse. You think your spouse will keep you more straight? No, your own kids will probably point it out before your spouse would, because your spouse is probably afraid of getting yelled at. Kids, they'll just say whatever they want. It's kind of funny, though, that kids will sit there and do that. It's kind of amazing that it happens that way. Now, speaking of something amazing, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the program, and I wanted to end on this because it was just amazing to watch this happen. And it was brought to my attention on a Facebook post that a Marine veteran was arrested, and in the event of his being arrested, his rights were not read to him. He was questioned about Facebook posts about political nature, and I'm not agreeing with all of his political posts that he made because they cross a line that I can't even say. But freedom of speech was completely infringed upon in this case. And I was then invited to the Facebook page for this man in Virginia. And he didn't get arrested and get sent to jail. He got arrested and got sent to a psych ward, and they just kept him in the psych ward and kept trying to tell him that he needed to take medication and he needed to do this and needed to do that, and he kept asking the questions. The family kept asking the questions. What crime was committed? And legally you have only X amount of days you can hold someone in a jail, much less a psych ward, without criminally putting them through detainment. And I watched radical posts being done in the Facebook page. I watched the family try, and it got so out of control, the family had to shut down the page where only they can make posts and the other administrators. But it got to the point where the VA code 37.2-808 said that a person in emergency custody may only be held for 4 hours unless a magistrate enters a temporary detention order, and he was held for like several days. Well, after I found out about it, I sent it on to some other media and some other people, and it just kept going and growing and growing. The Facebook page has over 11,000 people, and people kept asking for this Marine to be removed. He needs freedom. He needs to be, back with his family. He needs to be allowed to do stuff. If you think his post wrong, then charge him with something and let the judicial system take care of it. But putting someone in a position like that, without giving them a charge of anything, that doesn't make any sense. And like I said, I'm not going to show the Facebook page, the Facebook posts, but I will show like his Facebook page real quick. Brandon, as his name is, and I'm not going to show the other people's names. I'll just show this. Brandon, as you see, and no, he doesn't own a gun. This is actually a picture a long time ago. But that's the guy I'm talking about, Brandon Robb. And the question was brought up after he was detained, after all the process that went through. It's like, who else could be arrested? Apparently there's some other people saying they've been arrested. I can't verify that. I can only verify this story because of the release statement done by his well, here, let me just show it to you. His attorney. And the Rutherford Institute actually stepped in and had a press release done on this guy and said, hey, what you're doing is wrong. You don't need to be holding this guy. There's no reason for it. And if you think, his posts are wrong, you should remove it. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this on my show is we see many times that Christians or conservatives or other people end up being put in some kind of position where government is involved. And in this case, this is quite a radical case. And I had a hard time trying to debate on how I would talk about this. How would I cover this? What would make any sense? Apparently, they're ready to file a civil lawsuit because he's gone through this for over a week. And according to Virginia law, they're allowed to, go through these things. And I'm sitting here wondering exactly what's the next step. And I'm going to go to the Rutherford post because it's just amazing sitting here seeing what can happen when you start talking on a public forum. For those that know, our government is able to monitor Facebook and MySpace and Twitter and all this stuff. So when we write things can happen. Apparently another Marine saw what he said and was kind of concerned. I understand. Be concerned. Get him checked out. But if you're not going to charge the guy, then he needs to get set free. It's right here, the Rutherford Institute, and this is on, something that is what they do. It's the Defense of Civil Liberties and Human Rights, and this is their actual website. It's the Rutherford. It's just rutherford.org. And what happened? The Circuit Court Judge Alan Sherritt dismissed the government's case against Brandon Robb, who the Marine that was arrested by local police, FBI agents, detained in a psych ward, and forced to undergo evaluations based on his Facebook posts and lines from song lyrics. In the group, there was also a change.org thing. We need to set them free. And I just sat back and watched. I told them that I would pray for them because, like I said, there were people that, and the family even said it, there were people that were joining this group that had their own personal vendetta intentions that weren't about freeing Robb, but there were Occupy posts in there, there were Tea Party posts, Republican Democrat posts, and it got out of control. And I just stayed right with the thing of facts of why was this veteran arrested, what did he do. Yes, I understand why they took him in. No, I don't think you can keep them. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up the story. If us as Christians, or maybe you're not a Christian, and you're in a situation where you don't have your Miranda rights read to you, that's the first big no-no. If you're detained for X amount of days and your rights aren't checked out, I know there's the NDAA and other things where there's supposed to be a situation, and I don't really get into the in-depth of it, where can you be arrested without having, charges put on you. I'm not going to go on that route. And I know I'm probably losing a lot of the viewers on this story. But I wanted to cover this because what happens when we finally fulfill what happens in the book of Revelation. This is the kind of stuff that will happen. Christians will get arrested in America. We're not to that point quite yet. But it is in the Middle East. It is in Africa. It is in China. If you're a Christian and you have a Bible in China, they can confiscate your Bible if it's not registered by their government. Yeah, you have to register Bibles and churches in the government, not as 501c3, but as actual entities that should be allowed to ordain. So if you get Bibles If you're just an individual and you want a Bible, if it's not a government Bible, it means, and government Bible in China means it's edited. It's not the same Bible that you and I read here in the U.S. This is the reason why I wanted to talk about this story, because it gets to this point where you fall away from the wayside and you don't realize the true facts and figures of what life is. Yeah, when you go in China, when you go to Africa. Why? How do I know this? Because I work with missionaries and I see the missionary posts saying that we have to smuggle Bibles into China or into Africa or into Sudan or into Tunisia. So then we can bring them through the border to Egypt and then cross over to go in Iraq and other places. That's something that I'm concerned with. Because when we get in these positions, we end up not knowing all the facts. And that's what worries me today, is not having all the pieces put together. Is we in America don't realize what's happening overseas. Especially Christians. We don't see the big full potential of what's really happening when you see posts about pray for the persecuted church. I mean, well, what does that really mean? What's really going on over there? Well, this pastor was detained for spreading the gospel and his family was murdered and raped. I'm like, do we really think about these things? And how does this connect to what's happening with Brandon Robb? Because that was our own government making a bad decision. People finding out about it. I mean, good grief, there's 11,000 people on the Support Brandon Robb page. And regardless of where their viewpoint is at, they're angry about it. And I understand why. You know, at first, this was a radical story. At the beginning of the week, this was considered the most craziest story in the world. And there's just no way this is actually happening. And then the Rutherford Institute gets involved. And then people are like, oh, wait a minute. This might actually have some validity here. And now I'm sharing with you the persecuted church stuff going on. It's very similar. You know, we have people in San Diego, California, who are in a home, just like my home right now, and they're being told what? They're being told that they can't have church services in their home because the 5 to 6 people that are showing up to their house aren't legislated to be a church. So we're already having this happening to the church. It's happening to veterans. It's happening overseas. At what point do we get educated and say no? What do we know about our rights? Now, am I going to sit here and say that you should get all radical and get crazy and overthrow the government and blah, 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 blah? No, I'm not going to tell you to do any of that. And there are people that were in this group that were going in that direction. And that's why the administrator said, enough is enough. We're not having that. I want my son back. I want my friend back. I want my family member home. And that's the thing that made me mad about the group. Is I'm watching these friends and family members and all these people sitting, waiting and hoping that Brandon could be released because nothing was being done right and they just wanted him home. That would be the same thing that happens to my brothers and sisters that are in ministry all across the globe who say, well, we need help because we're being persecuted. We got kids in Sudan that are being kidnapped and in Uganda and elsewhere. I have a missionary that I talked to, and they said that, you know, their ministry contact in Central America was mugged outside of the building where they were sleeping. And this was a group of women that were sleeping in a room waiting for this guy, I believe it was a guy, to show up to transport them to their next ministry location. Now, I know that's a radical thing for people to even possibly understand. Well, that's not happening in America. I want Christians to understand your rights, and that's the thing. Will we as Christians be able to stand up one day and say, if we're put in this situation, will we know what to do? Will we know that our rights are infringed upon if you don't have your Miranda rights read? Would you know that if you were sent to a psych ward or if you were arrested, if you weren't placed with a charge, you shouldn't be there? and depending on who is in political offices in America, can completely decide the fate of Christianity in America. Now, I have friends that say they're Christians on both sides of the spectrum. But I also have friends who look at both sides of the spectrum and see certain bills and things that can be passed by Republicans and Democrats that have affected Christians in a negative way, that have affected atheists and other people in negative ways. And you have to understand boundaries. You have to understand our history and where we've come from, because if we don't, then where are we going to be in a few years? See, right now, Wall Street and government politics are full of fear and mudslinging and facts and then non-facts and stretching the truth and telling the truth. And if you don't know what the truth is, then you're just going to do whatever happens. See, that's one of the biggest things in America right now about the culture, pop culture, popular culture, is finding the most, and this is what they teach at college, this is what they teach in other places, is finding the most fastest and effective way to get the most emotional response to get your message out. That's pretty much summarizing a marketing class in a nutshell, or a business class in a nutshell. You need to have the right title, you need to have the right color, you need to have the right music, and you need to sit here and present this in the right format package so you have the most pizzazz and the most astonishing awe moment, so you can get more viewers, so you can get more people, so you can do more things. And that's what you have to be careful of. Don't be fooled by the nice pretty peacock with the flowery feathers that are opened up. I mean, the Bible talks about them as wolves in sheep clothing. That whole little paraphrase thing going on. You have to understand exactly what's going on. And if you don't, you can be taken under really quick. I've seen people that have talked about how they voted for a party, or they voted for laws, or they trusted someone or something, and then more things were revealed later on that they didn't know, and they changed their mind about things. That's pretty much that whole marine issue in a nutshell. And I wanted to make certain I shared this with you as one of our biggest topics of the evening, because you could be next. I could be next. I could do something that causes an individual, whether it's a government or not, to have a problem. I know with me being a Christian, especially going to a liberal college, there's a lot of people that have a problem with me just being a Christian. There are a lot of people that have problems with Christians in general. And I think if we learn to understand what Jesus really was trying to do when it came to ethics, when it came to how he talked to people, when he was before the judge, as I'll call it, Pilate, you realize he didn't have to defend himself that much. One big key telltale is you have to defend yourself too much, then do you really trust what you believe? That's a real radical way of talking about things, especially when we have Christians trying to fight for their freedoms and others not doing anything at all. There's a fine line on this, and I wanted to leave you tonight with the answers. The answers are not simple on how to do this. Like I said, you need to learn your historical facts, and historical facts are quite simply done with the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. That's one of the things. And I have several copies of a mini Young America's Foundation Declaration of Independence and Constitution. If you guys want, I can send you copies of this, because I have a lot. I have about, 20 or so. And I can sign it, or I can find the ones that were signed, because these were donated to the Young America's Foundation, and I give them away to people. Why? Because some people don't have their own copy of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. The other thing is what about Bibles? Yeah, Virginia got one. For those of you that are interested in the Christian faith, I want you to read a Bible. For those of you that aren't, there's other things you can do. You can start reading historical facts and understanding the rules of things. And we'll keep sharing stories, and we'll keep trying to bring a message so that you understand, the bigger picture. Because that's what I like to try and do with all these stories. I don't want to leave and end a show with it all being negative. Muslim Brotherhood this, Unconstitutional this, on this and that and whatever. I realize that what we can do and how we can solve and effectively fix these issues is quite simply done by being active. One of the biggest issues that I've noticed is a lack of communication right now. We have Christians and conservatives and all sorts of different people, but they're all far apart from one another. One of the things I want you to do is I want you to start networking. I want you to start talking and having dialogue with your family and your friends, and I challenge you to do something that's quite difficult. I want you to meet new people. It can be online, it can be in person. I want you to find people that have similar beliefs to you. Because the biggest, most difficulty in a conservative or even just a Christian life is trying to be what I call the Lone Ranger. For those of you that are old enough to know who I'm talking about, the Lone Ranger was this sheriff type figure who fought the bad guys with a little sidekick, and that was it. Well, anyone realizes when you're trying to bring forth a message, you're trying to do something, and you get attacked, and you don't have someone to help be there for you, or you don't have someone to be there to assist you in bringing the message and keeping you on guide. It's otherwise known in the Christian world back in the 90s as an accountability partner. You may not be necessarily ready for that level of getting out of your comfort zone, but I totally challenge you guys to find accountability partners to push your faith, to stretch you, to be there for you, friends, family, relatives, all sorts of things. I challenge you to continue to read your Bible, read messages, read different things, get educated, know the facts. I also challenge everybody to vote. And I also challenge many people, and I post on my Facebook and Twitter all the time. I get petitions on things, and I check them over, make certain they line up with the things that are Word of God, and then I will sign my name on that in a heartbeat. Because yes, your votes and yes, your signatures do matter. They can make things happen. In the case of this guy, it did happen because we got the message out. That's what I wanted to end with. Of all the people I scrambled to share that message with, in less than 7 days, things started going around, and it went from less than 1,000 people in that group to 11,000 people in that group in less than a week. And there are many people that have shown up to this show tonight for the first time because of all the hard work that we did this week. I was out of school for 2 weeks, and I've been making extra shows. That's the last thing I want to talk to you about. There is going to be, I have probably 13 JMC Light devotional videos made that will be posted on the YouTube channel shortly. And like I said, tomorrow we'll be doing a possibly an interview, and I need to do, I think it's 10 to 16 JMC Rewind videos on some, well, you'll see what they're about. They're going to be like review of some older interviews we're having. That's all I could actually find the time for in the 2 weeks that I was off. I'm also doing some writing for some things and everything like that. But I thought I would end the show on a good note. I always end the show on a good note because I don't want people to just hear bad stuff. And I try and find good stuff so then there's a balance between the two. Because the problem I see in media, mainstream media, is everything's negative. They don't always give solutions. They just read the story. So, well, in the news today, this person did this. Okay, now on to this, and this person did that. I like to try and have a dialogue, let you get inside of my head a little bit, show you that I'm actually thinking about these stories, and I'm actually thinking about ways that things can be fixed instead of just, well, that's the way it is. That's just a darn shame. I don't want it to be a darn shame. I want to see things change for the better. I want to see Christians have religious freedom. People be educated and get active in their faith. Get active in their ministry. Get active in their conservatism or whatever it is that causes you to like this program. That's what we're trying to do today. And I think tomorrow with Greg Laurie, yeah, they need to go to the Fractured Saint Project. I think tomorrow evening, it's going to be a great time of fellowship revival. Nearly 1,800 churches, for Harvest America. You guys have to check out Harvest America, because this is going to be, it's going to have several bands. It's going to have great it's going to have great preaching. But beyond great, the message that's going to be sent tomorrow is going to set people free. It's going to bring people into the kingdom. It's going to show a side of Christianity that many people don't see. Because he says, there is nothing this country so desperately needs as a spiritual revival. That's what Pastor Levi Lusko said. You know, Harvest America tomorrow. That is going to be the biggest thing, and it's harvest.org/crusades.
And on the border,
there'll be a live webcast for this tomorrow. You guys have to go to that. I'll post the link in the chat, because you got to check this out tomorrow, because it'll be simulcast on the internet. I'm going to try and be online. I don't know if I'm just going to do the Twitter, Facebook stuff while I watch it. I don't know if I'm going to go online. Like I said, I'm going to be editing some videos that we're making. Tomorrow's my last day off, going back to college on Monday. And now, instead of going to college like 2 or 4 days a week, I'll be going 5. Instead of taking 3 classes, I'm taking 4. So I'm getting more up into the full credit hour courses and really getting in there to try and finish up my last year of school. For those that are interested, it is Anaheim and Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. I just think this is going to be so amazing, because they're happening at multiple events. I mean, 1,800 churches across the U.S. globe are simulcasting this stuff. We're trying to get the message out. And at these other small places, there are going to be counselors. There's going to be people that want to pray with you. In fact, if you click the link, when this goes online, you'll be able to find people online that will pray with you. I will be available at some point through messages you see on our website. We have a quick prayer request button. I'm always available for people to pray for you. So tune in, check this out. It'll be an amazing time tomorrow. This has been JMC Live. It's been a wonderful evening. I think you guys are just so great for coming by. Thank you for stopping by. We'll be on air next Saturday for another JMC Live. Throughout the week, check out eternalflamenews.blogspot.com for all the stories that we don't cover on JMC Live. Some of the stories that we talk about on JMC Live come from that, like all the ones tonight came from Eternal Flame News. But later on, that's the way it goes. So we'll see you soon. Next week, Saturday, will be JMC Live. That'll be the 1st of September. God bless. Bye-bye.